During a hike, a family finds an abandoned bus in the forest with mysterious tracks, and when they entered, they found something surprising. Before watching this exciting account, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to attract 10 years of good luck. The sun had barely risen when the Johnson family loaded the car for their long-awaited adventure in the Smoky Mountains. Laura, the 45-year-old matriarch, anxiously checked her mental list while her husband, Carl, 48, loaded the last bags into the SUV's trunk. "Mom, have you seen my binoculars?" shouted Peter, their 12-year-old son, from his bedroom window. "They're in the green backpack, honey," replied Laura, smiling at her son's enthusiasm. She turned to her older daughter, Beth, 16, who was typing furiously on her phone. "Beth, please put that away. Remember we agreed to disconnect this weekend?" Beth rolled her eyes but obeyed, tucking the device into her pocket. "Okay, Mom, but only because I promised." The family climbed into the car, the excitement palpable in the air. Carl started the engine, and soon they were leaving behind the bustling center of Atlanta, heading towards the lush mountains awaiting them. As the urban landscape gave way to more bucolic views, Laura felt the tension of the past few months dissipate. Her job as an architect had been particularly stressful, with tight deadlines and demanding clients. Carl, a university professor, also longed for this break, away from classrooms and piles of papers to grade. "Look, Dad, a toucan!" exclaimed Peter, pointing to a tree by the roadside. The boy already had his binoculars in hand, ready for any sightings. Even Beth, who initially seemed reluctant about the trip, began to get excited. Her eyes sparkled as she took in the beauty of the mountains rising on the horizon. After a few hours of travel, punctuated by stops for snacks and photos, they arrived at the small town of Pineville, the gateway to the most beautiful trails in the region. The village, with its colorful houses and central square, adorned by a century-old church, looked like it came out of a postcard. They left their bags at the cozy inn they had booked and decided to explore the town before nightfall. The fresh mountain air and the tranquil pace of the place were already working their magic on the family. In the central square, they met Mr. James, an elderly man with grey hair and an easy smile, who introduced himself as a local guide. "You picked a great time to visit," he said, his eyes shining with the pride of someone who knows every stone in the place. "The trails are beautiful, and there's one in particular that I recommend. We call it the Path of Surprises." Laura and Carl exchanged intrigued looks. "Why that name?" asked Carl. Mr. James smiled mysteriously. You'll have to find out for yourselves. But I promise you won't regret it." Excited by the prospect of an adventure, the family decided they would take that trail first thing in the morning. They returned to the inn, where they enjoyed a homemade dinner prepared by the owner, Mrs. Mary, who enchanted them with stories about the region. That night, lying in bed next to Carl, Laura felt an emotion she hadn't experienced in years. It was as if the forest was calling her, promising to reveal long-forgotten secrets. "Do you feel that?" she whispered to her husband. Carl nodded, squeezing her hand. "It's like something special is waiting for us tomorrow." In the next room, Peter dreamed of exotic animals and unseen plants, while Beth, surprisingly, had put her phone aside and was leafing through a guide about the local fauna. The Johnson family fell asleep to the gentle sound of the wind in the trees, unaware that the next day's trail would lead them to a discovery that would change their lives forever. The forest held its secrets, patiently waiting to reveal them to the open hearts daring to enter its domain. Dawn brought with it a soft mist that hung over the mountains, enveloping Pineville in a veil of mystery. The Johnson family woke up early, excited about the hike ahead. After a hearty breakfast at the inn with homemade bread, fresh fruit, and the unmistakable aroma of Tennessee coffee, they met Mr. James again in the central square. The old guide greeted them with an enigmatic smile. "Ready for the Path of Surprises?" he asked, adjusting his straw hat. "More than ready," exclaimed Peter, practically bouncing with excitement. Mr. James led them to the trailhead at the edge of the forest. Before departing, he turned to the family with a serious look. "Remember, the forest has its own secrets. Keep your eyes and hearts open." With those mysterious words echoing in their minds, the Johnsons began their journey. The trail wound between ancient trees, the fresh morning air filled with the scent of wildflowers and damp earth. Laura walked ahead with Peter, who kept pointing out different plants and birds, frantically consulting his pocket guide. Carl and Beth followed closely behind, the teenager surprised at how much she was enjoying the experience. "Look, Dad," Beth called, pointing to a fallen log. "Are those bromeliads?" Carl approached, examining the colorful plants. "Exactly, Beth. I'm impressed you recognize them." The girl smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest at her father's praise. Maybe this trip wasn't so bad after all, she thought. As they advanced, the trail became more challenging, with exposed roots and slippery rocks. Laura felt a growing connection with the nature around her, as if each step took her deeper, not only into the forest, but into herself. After about 2 hours of hiking, they reached a small clearing. Peter, who was leading, stopped abruptly. "Mom, Dad, look at this." On the ground, clearly visible in the damp earth, were footprints, but they weren't common animal tracks. "They're human footprints," observed Carl, kneeling for a closer look, "and they seem recent." Laura felt a shiver run down her spine. "But Mr. James said this trail was rarely used." "Maybe it's part of the surprise he mentioned," suggested Beth, her voice mixing curiosity and a hint of apprehension. They decided to follow the footprints, which seemed to veer off the main trail. The vegetation grew denser, and they had to push their way through bushes and giant ferns. Suddenly, Peter let out a muffled exclamation. "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Emerging from the dense vegetation, they saw something completely out of place in the lush forest. The rusty rear end of an old bus, almost entirely covered by vines and moss. "How did this get here?" murmured Laura, incredulous. They approached cautiously. The bus seemed to have been abandoned long ago, its windows fogged by time and humidity. However, as they circled the vehicle, they noticed something strange. There was a recent trail leading to the front door, and marks on the ground indicated frequent use. "Someone has been using this place," concluded Carl, his voice a mix of fascination and caution. Beth, overcoming her initial fear, approached one of the less dirty windows and peeked inside. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Guys, you won't believe this." The family crowded around the window, each trying to see inside the bus. What they saw left them speechless. The interior had been completely transformed into a sort of makeshift home. There were shelves with books, a small kitchen at the back, and even a neatly made bed. "Someone lives here," whispered Laura, a mix of admiration and concern in her voice. At that moment, a movement inside the bus caught their attention. In the far corner, partially hidden by shadows, a pair of bright eyes watched them. Then, to their astonishment, a ginger cat emerged from the shadows, followed by 2 others. The felines stared at them curiously, showing no fear. One of them, the largest, approached the window, meowing softly as if inviting them in. The Johnson family exchanged looks, a mix of emotions on their faces. They had set out in search of an adventure in nature, but what they found was something far beyond their expectations. The abandoned bus, transformed into a secret home, held mysteries they were about to uncover. Laura took a deep breath, making a decision. "Let's go in," she said firmly, "but carefully." "But whoever lives here clearly values their privacy." As they headed for the bus door, the cats watched them intently, like silent guardians of a hidden world in the heart of the forest. The Johnson family's adventure was just beginning, and the surprises awaiting them inside that transformed bus promised to change their lives forever. Carefully, Carl turned the rusty door handle of the bus. To his surprise, it opened without resistance, as if it had been waiting for visitors. A slight creak echoed through the forest as the Johnson family hesitantly stepped inside the transformed vehicle. The smell of wood, dried herbs, and something indefinably cozy greeted them. Sunlight filtered through the partially covered windows, creating a play of light and shadow that gave the place an almost magical atmosphere. "It's incredible," whispered Beth, her eyes scanning the shelves filled with books, jars of dried plants, and curious little objects. Peter, fascinated, approached a table covered with equipment that looked like they came from a science lab. "Look, Dad. There are magnifying glasses, microscopes, and even a small telescope." Laura ran her fingers along a shelf, noticing the absence of dust. "Someone has been taking care of this place regularly," she observed. The cats, now more comfortable with the visitors' presence, circled between their legs, meowing softly. The largest one, the ginger cat that had invited them in, seemed particularly interested in Carl. "Hey, little friend." Carl bent down to pet the feline. It was then that he noticed something peculiar. The cat wore a thin collar with a small medallion. "Look, it has a name." The family gathered around as Carl examined the medallion. Galileo, he read aloud. What an interesting name for a cat. As if responding to the call, Galileo meowed and began walking towards the back of the bus, looking back as if he wanted them to follow. I think he wants to show us something, said Peter, already following the feline. Galileo led them to a small hatch in the bus floor, partially hidden by a rug. The cat scratched the edge of the hatch, looking expectantly at Carl. Carefully, the professor lifted the hatch, revealing a secret compartment. Inside, there was a wooden box carved with symbols resembling constellations. "Can I open it, Dad?" asked Peter, barely containing his curiosity. Carl hesitated for a moment, but something in Galileo's look, almost as if giving permission, made him nod. Inside the box, they found a leather-bound journal, several letters yellowed by time, and a series of old photographs. Laura picked up one of the photos, examining it closely. "Look," she said, showing the image to the family. "It's this bus, but it seems to be from decades ago. And there's a man in front. He looks so happy." The photo showed a middle-aged man with grey hair and a well-trimmed beard, smiling in front of the newly painted bus. In the background, the same forest, though younger, could be seen. Beth, who had started flipping through the journal, let out an exclamation. "Guys, this is amazing. Listen to this. Today marks 5 years since I left the city behind and found my true home in this forest. My feline companions are all I need, and together we guard the secrets of this magical land." The family exchanged looks of astonishment and fascination. They were standing before the life story of someone who had chosen to abandon civilization to live in harmony with nature. "There's more," continued Beth, turning the pages. "He talks about botanical discoveries, astronomical observations, and... Wait, this is strange. What is it?" asked Laura, noticing the change in her daughter's tone. "The last entries are from just a few months ago, but the writing style is different, like..." At that moment, a noise from outside the bus startled them. Footsteps approached, breaking branches and moving vegetation. The family froze, looking at each other with a mix of fear and anticipation. Galileo and the other cats, however, didn't seem alarmed. On the contrary, they began meowing animatedly, running towards the bus door. Carl, gathering courage, took a step towards the exit. "I'll see who it is," he said, his voice betraying a slight tremor. As he approached the door, the footsteps outside grew closer. The Johnson family held their breath, their hearts pounding. Who could it be? The mysterious bus resident? A forest ranger? Or something completely unexpected? The handle turned slowly, and the door began to open. The bus door opened slowly, creaking on its rusty hinges. The Johnson family held their breath, eyes fixed on the entrance. To their surprise, it wasn't an old bearded man as they had imagined the diary's owner to be, but a young woman about 30 years old, with long brown hair tied in a braid and piercing green eyes. She stopped abruptly upon seeing the family, her expression quickly changing from surprise to a mix of caution and curiosity. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice firm but not hostile. Carl was the first to recover from the shock. "Sorry for the intrusion," he said, stepping forward. "I'm Carl Johnson, and this is my family. We found this place by accident during our hike." The woman studied them for a moment before visibly relaxing. A small smile appeared on her lips. "I should have known this would happen eventually," she said, stepping inside the bus. "My name is Sophia." "Sophia Reed." The cats immediately ran to her, rubbing against her legs and meowing happily. Sophia bent down to pet them, her gaze softening. "You've already met Galileo, Tesla, and Newton," she said, indicating each cat. "My companions and guardians of this place." Laura stepped forward, still holding the photo they had found. "Sophia, we're sorry again for entering without permission. We were intrigued and, well, we found this." She extended the photograph. Sophia took the photo, her eyes filling with a momentary sadness. "Ah, I see you've met my grandfather," she said softly. "Your grandfather?" exclaimed Peter, unable to contain his curiosity. Sophia nodded, moving to sit in a small makeshift armchair. She gestured for the family to sit as well. "Yes, my grandfather, Edward Reed. He created this refuge over 40 years ago." Beth, still holding the diary, looked at Sophia with a mix of fascination and confusion. "But the last entries are recent." "Ah, that," Sophia smiled. "I continued my grandfather's diary. It's a way to keep his memory and work alive." In the following minutes, Sophia shared with the Johnsons the extraordinary story of her grandfather. Edward Reed had been a renowned biologist who, disillusioned with the frantic pace of urban life and concerned about environmental destruction, decided to retreat to the forest. He transformed the abandoned bus into a home and laboratory, dedicating himself to studying and preserving the local flora and fauna. "My grandfather discovered plant species that science didn't yet know," explained Sophia, her eyes shining with pride. "He developed natural remedies that helped many people in the village, always keeping the exact location of this place a secret." "And how did you end up here?" asked Laura, fascinated by the story. Sophia sighed, a nostalgic smile on her lips. "I grew up hearing my grandfather's stories. He would bring me here occasionally, teaching me about the forest and its importance. When he became too old to care for this place alone, I decided to continue his legacy." Carl looked around, noticing the scientific equipment. "So you're a scientist too?" "A biologist like my grandfather," confirmed Sophia. "But I'm also a writer. I've been documenting his discoveries and my own. I'm working on a book that I hope will raise awareness about the importance of this forest." As Sophia spoke, the cats settled comfortably among the family members. Galileo, in particular, seemed to have taken a liking to Peter, purring in his lap. "But why keep all this a secret?" asked Beth, genuinely intrigued. Sophia stood up, walking to one of the windows. Her gaze swept over the forest outside before turning back to the family. "Because not everyone would understand or respect this place. My grandfather feared that if its location became widely known, we could lose much of what makes it special." The Johnson family exchanged looks, understanding the magnitude of what they had discovered. It wasn't just a secret refuge, but a sanctuary of knowledge and preservation. "Sophia," said Laura, her voice filled with emotion, "what you and your grandfather have done here is incredible. How can we help protect it?" The question hung in the air, filled with possibilities. Sophia looked at each family member, as if assessing their sincerity. Finally, a warm smile lit up her face. "Maybe," she said slowly, "it's time to share some of this knowledge with the world, with the right people." At that moment, inside the old bus transformed into an oasis of science and nature. The Johnson family felt they were on the brink of something extraordinary. An adventure that had begun as a simple hike in the forest was about to turn into a journey of discovery, preservation, and perhaps a new purpose for their lives. The rest of the afternoon passed like a dream for the Johnson family. Sophia, seeing their genuine interest and respect for her grandfather's work, decided to share more about the discoveries and secrets kept in that forest refuge. "Come with me," said Sophia, standing up and heading to the bus door. "There's something I want to show you." The family followed her outside, the cats walking silently behind them like furry guardians. Sophia led them down an almost invisible trail, moving away from the bus. After a few minutes of walking, they arrived at a small clearing. In the center, there was a circle of carefully arranged stones. Sophia knelt near the circle and gently brushed aside some leaves, revealing a variety of plants the family had never seen before. "These," explained Sophia, "are some of the species my grandfather discovered. Plants with incredible medicinal properties, some that can even help treat diseases modern medicine still struggles to cure." Peter approached, fascinated. "Wow! Why doesn't anyone know about them?" Sophia smiled, but there was a note of sadness in her eyes. "My grandfather feared that if these discoveries were revealed without proper care, there could be a rush to exploit the forest. He believed knowledge should be shared, but responsibly." Beth, who had brought the diary with her, flipped through the pages with a new understanding. "It mentions a blue flower that only blooms at night. Is that real?" "Very real," confirmed Sophia. "In fact, if you can stay until nightfall, I can show it to you. It's one of my grandfather's most fascinating discoveries." Laura and Carl exchanged looks. They had planned to return to the village before nightfall, but the prospect of witnessing something so rare was tempting. "We can stay," decided Laura. "That is, if it's not an inconvenience, Sophia." "Not at all," replied Sophia, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "In fact, I'm happy to share this with people who truly care." While waiting for nightfall, Sophia showed the family other fascinating aspects of the forest. She pointed out almost invisible marks on the trees that indicated the passage of rare animals, taught them to identify edible and medicinal plants, and shared stories about her grandfather's discoveries. Carl, particularly intrigued by the scientific aspect, couldn't stop asking questions. Sophia, have you ever thought about publishing these discoveries in scientific journals? Sophia hesitated before answering. I have, many times, but I always feared it would attract too much attention to this place. However, she paused, looking thoughtfully at the family. Maybe it's time to find a way to share this knowledge safely. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the group's excitement grew. Sophia led them to another small clearing, where several plants with closed buds were arranged in a circular pattern. Now watch, whispered Sophia. As darkness fell, something magical began to happen. One by one, the buds started to open, revealing petals of such an intense blue that they seemed to glow in the twilight. The scent emanating from the flowers was soft and ethereal, unlike anything the family had ever experienced. It's beautiful, whispered Beth, her eyes wide with wonder. Peter, unable to contain his curiosity, asked, "Why do they only bloom at night?" Sophia smiled, clearly pleased with the question. Good observation, Peter. These flowers have developed a symbiotic relationship with a rare species of nocturnal moth. They are the only pollinators capable of reaching the nectar deep within the flower. As they watched the spectacle, Laura noticed something moving in the shadows. Sophia, what is that? Sophia followed Laura's gaze and smiled. Ah, you're in luck today. It's one of our most elusive visitors. Slowly, a small animal emerged from the vegetation. It had golden fur and large, bright eyes. A golden lion tamarin, exclaimed Carl, barely able to contain his excitement. Exactly, confirmed Sophia. This area is one of the few remaining habitats for this species. My grandfather and I have worked to protect them and study their habits. The family watched in reverent silence as the small primate cautiously approached the blue flowers, seemingly as fascinated by the nocturnal display as they were. At that moment, surrounded by the beauty and mystery of the forest, each member of the Johnson family felt a deep connection with nature and with each other. They had set out in search of a simple weekend adventure, but they were discovering something much greater, a purpose. Sophia, observing the family's reaction, felt a wave of hope. Perhaps, she thought, these were the allies she and her grandfather had always hoped to find, to help protect and share the forest's secrets. As the blue flowers continued their silent spectacle, and the golden lion tamarin watched curiously, the night in the forest promised more revelations and, perhaps, the beginning of a new journey for all of them. The path back to the bus was illuminated by the full moon and the fireflies dancing among the trees, creating an almost magical atmosphere. The Johnson family walked in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts, processing everything they had experienced in the past few hours. When they reached the refuge, Sophia lit some solar lanterns, bathing the interior of the bus in a soft, welcoming glow. The cats, who had accompanied the nocturnal expedition, settled into their favorite spots, watching the humans with sleepy eyes. "I know it's late," said Sophia, "but I'd like to propose something to you." She paused as if gathering courage. "What would you think about staying here for a few days? There's so much more to see and learn." The proposal caught the family by surprise. Laura and Carl exchanged looks, a silent conversation passing between them. "It would be amazing," began Beth, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "But we have our obligations in the city. School, work." Carl nodded, thoughtful. "That's true, but—" He looked at Laura, who smiled encouragingly. "Maybe we can rearrange our commitments. This is a unique opportunity. Besides," added Laura, "I feel like something important is happening here, something that goes beyond a simple vacation trip." Sophia smiled, grateful for the understanding. "I completely understand if it's not possible, but if you can stay, I promise it will be an experience you'll never forget." Peter, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. "Can we help protect the forest, like your grandfather did?" The boy's question touched everyone's hearts. Sophia knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "That's exactly what I hope, Peter. We need people like you to continue this work." After a brief discussion, the family decided they would stay for a few more days, rearranging their commitments by phone the next morning. The excitement was palpable in the air. "Great!" exclaimed Sophia. "We'll start early tomorrow. There's so much to show you." While Sophia prepared sleeping arrangements for everyone, the bus surprisingly comfortable with its hidden bunks and sleeping bags, the family gathered for a private conversation. "What do you all think of this?" asked Carl. his voice low but full of emotion. "It's amazing, Dad," replied Beth. "I never thought I'd be so interested in science and nature. It's like we've found something really important." Laura nodded, her eyes shining. "I feel the same way. And did you see how Sophia spoke? She needs help to continue her grandfather's work." "We can be like guardians of the forest," exclaimed Peter, barely containing his enthusiasm. Carl smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "Hold on, champ. But you're right. There's something special happening here. Something that could be bigger than us." As they settled in for the night, each member of the Johnson family felt a mix of excitement and purpose. What had begun as a simple hike in the forest had turned into a journey of discovery, not just of the world around them, but of themselves. Sophia, watching the family from a distance, felt a wave of hope. For years she had carried her grandfather's legacy alone, fearing that the knowledge and discoveries might be lost. Now, for the first time, she glimpsed the possibility of a different future. That night, under the roof of the old bus transformed into a home and laboratory, new dreams began to take shape. Dreams of preservation, discovery, and a deeper connection with nature. Outside, the forest continued its eternal cycle. The blue flowers closed their petals, the nocturnal animals performed their silent dance, and the stars shone brightly in the sky. It was as if the ecosystem itself knew that something important was about to happen. The Johnson family fell asleep to the gentle sounds of the nocturnal forest, their hearts filled with anticipation for what the coming days would bring. Little did they know they were about to embark on an adventure that would not only change their lives, but could have a lasting impact on the preservation of that precious piece of nature. The sunrise brought a new energy to the forest refuge. The Johnson family woke up to the birds' songs and the aroma of fresh coffee prepared by Sophia. The day promised to be full of discoveries and challenges. After a hearty breakfast with fresh fruits and homemade bread, Sophia gathered everyone around an improvised table outside the bus. Her face was serious, but her eyes shone with determination. "Before we start our exploration today," she began, "there's something important I need to share with you." Sophia opened a worn map of the region. "This area we're protecting is under threat. There are plans for a large real estate development that would destroy much of the forest." The news fell like a bomb on the family. Carl frowned, worried. "But is that legal? Isn't this a preservation area?" Sophia sighed. "Unfortunately, only part of it is officially protected. The rest is vulnerable. My grandfather fought for years to expand the conservation area, but without success." Laura, who had been silent until then, spoke with conviction. "There must be something we can do. We can't let them destroy all this." Sophia smiled, grateful for the support. "That's why I'm so happy you're here. With your help, maybe we can make a difference." The plan Sophia presented was ambitious. They would document the area's biodiversity extensively, focusing especially on the rare species and medicinal plants discovered by her grandfather. With this evidence, they could pressure the authorities to reconsider the forest's protection status. The family divided into teams. Carl and Beth, with their photography and drawing skills, would be responsible for visually documenting the species. Laura, with her keen eye for detail, would help Sophia catalogue the medicinal plants. Peter, enthusiastic, would observe and record the animals' behavior. The next hours were filled with intense activity. Sophia guided them through parts of the forest they hadn't imagined existed. They discovered a hidden waterfall, home to rare amphibian species. They found ancient trees that Sophia explained were crucial to the local ecosystem. Peter, in his observation post, made an exciting discovery. "Look," he whispered, pointing to a high branch. There, a family of golden lion tamarins played, seemingly unconcerned with the observers below. "This is incredible," murmured Beth, capturing the moment with her camera. "I didn't know there were so many of them here." Sophia explained that the area was one of the last safe havens for the species. If this place is destroyed, they won't have anywhere to go. The magnitude of the situation began to weigh on everyone. It wasn't just about saving trees or plants, but about preserving an entire ecosystem, a home for countless species. At noon, they gathered again at the bus to review what they had collected. The table was covered with notes, drawings, photos, and plant samples. It was a wealth of information Sophia had never managed to gather alone. "This is amazing," she said, emotional. "With all this, we have a real chance to make a difference." While organizing the material, Laura noticed something interesting in Edward's old diary notes. "Sophia, look at this. Your grandfather mentions a star clearing. What is that?" Sophia's eyes lit up. "The star clearing. I almost forgot. It's a special place my grandfather discovered. He believed it was the forest's energetic heart." Everyone's curiosity was immediately piqued. Sophia explained that the clearing was a unique spot where, due to a special arrangement of trees and terrain, it was possible to see a perfect panorama of the night sky, even in the dense forest. "Can we go there?" asked Peter, excited. Sophia hesitated for a moment. "It's a place I rarely show anyone, but I think you deserve to see it. We'll go tonight." The rest of the afternoon was dedicated to organizing the collected data and planning the next steps. The Johnson family was fully immersed in the mission, each contributing their unique skills. As the sun began to set, Sophia led them down an almost invisible trail. They walked for about half an hour, the forest growing denser around them. Suddenly, the vegetation opened up, revealing a perfectly formed circular clearing. In the center, there was a circle of ancient stones, almost like a mini Stonehenge. "Welcome to the Star Clearing," announced Sophia, her voice full of reverence. As night fell, the sky above them transformed into a spectacle of stars like they had never seen before. It was breathtaking. "This is where," said Sophia softly, "we truly feel the magic of this forest. This is why we fight to protect it." At that moment, under the starry canopy and surrounded by the ancient energy of the forest, the Johnson family felt they had found more than a cause to defend. They had discovered a new life mission. The challenge ahead was immense, but together, a united family, a dedicated scientist, and a forest full of secrets, they were ready to face it. The fight for the forest's preservation was just beginning, and the fate of an entire ecosystem rested in their hands. The following days passed in a whirlwind of activities. The Johnson family, now fully committed to the cause, worked tirelessly alongside Sophia to compile all the necessary evidence to protect the forest. Carl, using his university contacts, secured the support of some fellow biologists and environmentalists. They came to the forest to verify the discoveries and add scientific weight to the report they were preparing. Laura, in turn, used her architectural skills to create detailed maps of the area, highlighting critical biodiversity points and zones that would be most affected by the planned real estate development. Beth, always active on social media, started an online campaign to raise awareness about the forest's importance. Her posts, filled with stunning photos and interesting facts about local species, quickly gained traction and began attracting media attention. Peter, the youngest of the group, surprised everyone with his dedication. He spent hours observing and documenting animal behavior, especially the golden lion tamarins. His field notebook, filled with detailed drawings and observations, became a valuable piece of their collective work. Sophia, seeing the family's enthusiasm and dedication, felt a wave of hope she hadn't experienced in years. "You have no idea how much this means," she said one night, while everyone was gathered around a campfire near the bus. "For so long I thought I was alone in this fight." It was that night they made a crucial decision. It wasn't enough to document and report, they needed to act. They decided to organize a public hearing in the nearest town to present their findings and mobilize the local community. The preparations for the hearing were intense. Carl and Sophia worked on a robust scientific presentation, while Laura prepared impactful visualizations of the collected data. Beth intensified her social media campaign, even gaining the support of some celebrities committed to environmental causes. The day of the hearing arrived. The small town hall auditorium was packed, with local residents, press representatives, and even some state politicians who had been drawn by the growing attention to the case. Sophia began the presentation, her voice trembling slightly with nerves but gaining strength as she spoke. She told the story of her grandfather, the discoveries made over the years, and the vital importance of the forest for the region's ecological balance. Carl presented the scientific data, explaining in clear terms how the destruction of the area would affect not only wildlife, but also the region's climate and water resources. Laura showed her maps and projections, vividly illustrating the impact the development would have on the landscape and ecosystem. Beth and Peter, representing the youth's voice, spoke passionately about the need to preserve nature for future generations. The presentation was met with stunned silence, followed by an explosion of applause and questions. It was clear they had struck a nerve in the community. The most impactful moment, however, came when Sophia revealed the existence of the medicinal plants discovered by her grandfather. She explained the potential of these plants for developing new medical treatments, emphasizing that destroying the forest would be like burning a library before reading its books. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activities. The hearing had triggered a wave of public support. Local politicians, pressured by their constituents, began reconsidering the real estate project. Scientists from renowned universities expressed interest in studying the area. Finally, after months of tireless campaigning, the news everyone had been waiting for arrived. The state government had decided to expand the preservation area, including the entire region Sophia and her family had fought to protect. The celebration at the forest refuge was emotional. Sophia, with tears in her eyes, hugged each member of the Johnson family. "How you didn't just save this forest," she said. "You honored my grandfather's legacy and gave hope for the future." But the story didn't end there. The Johnson family, deeply transformed by the experience, decided they couldn't simply return to their old lives. Carl took a leave of absence from the university to dedicate himself to research in the forest. Laura began developing sustainable architecture projects inspired by what she had learned. Beth, now determined to pursue a career in conservation biology, started planning her university studies with a new purpose. Peter, the youngest but perhaps the most deeply affected, declared his desire to become a forest guardian, like Sophia and her grandfather. The old bus in the forest, once a solitary refuge, became the center of a new research and environmental education project. Visitors from all over the country began coming to learn about the importance of preservation and to witness the incredible biodiversity that had almost been lost. As the sun set over the now protected forest, the Johnson family and Sophia sat in the star clearing, reflecting on the incredible journey they had shared. "You know," said Sophia, looking up at the starry sky, "my grandfather always said the true magic of the forest is in how it connects all living things. I think he would be happy to know that this magic also connected all of us." The family nodded in silence, each feeling the weight and joy of that connection. What had begun as a simple hike in the forest had turned into a life mission, a new beginning not just for them but for an entire ecosystem of life that now had a secure future. And so, under the starry canopy and lulled by the nocturnal sounds of the forest, they knew their true adventure was just beginning. The green legacy they had helped preserve would be their heritage for future generations, a testament to the power of passion, science, and love for nature.